We are live from Sales HQ. I'm Vince Beasy, your host and the founder here at Sales HQ. And our guest today is Todd Brengel.
You got it, Brengel.
Brengel. Before we get into your story, which we will, because as you know, Live from Sales HQ is all about telling the story from the perspective of the sales leader or sales guest at the time. And everybody has a different story. So I'm really interested in getting into that. But first, let's talk about Sales HQ. We're actually doing a celebration next month, Todd. It's going to be 6 months of doors open.
Wow.
I know, it feels like it was like yesterday. So we're actually opening it up to the entire sales community here in the Raleigh-Durham area. So there is an event on saleshq.co. You go to the community, you go to the event, and you can sign up for it. It's free. I expect we'll have probably somewhere between 100 and 150 people here celebrating our 6 months, but also celebrating the sales community. It used to be before the pandemic that in this area, we had lots of different organizations that were coming together to support sellers and salespeople and sales leadership. But a lot of those have dissipated. So I want to pick that back up and give back to the community a little bit and get us all together again to see if we're less socially awkward than we were, right? So that's going to be September 25th. Again, go to saleshq.co, go to our events area. You can sign up for free. All right, Todd, let's focus on what's more important. Let's talk about you.
Let's talk, Vince. Thanks for having me.
So first, before we get into your story, talk to us a little bit what you're up to these days.
Yeah, so I've been busy the last few years. I moved to Raleigh about 3 years ago. Recently, I've been serving as Chief Revenue Officer at the Muse, which is an employment branding solution. It's a company based in New York. So I've been busy with that. Also been advising 2 early stage companies on go-to-market, helping them with their ICP, helping them figure out channels. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's busy enough, right?
Yeah, with that and 3 kids, I've got my hands full. So
boys, girls?
Got 2 girls and a boy.
All right.
So
it's awesome.
We're ready for school to go back next week.
Is that next week?
Next week.
Next Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
That's right, after Labor Day weekend. That's right. That's interesting. But I grew up in the Northeast. We went back. I think it was a Tuesday after. I thought Tuesday after. That's right. This is the Tuesday before Labor Day. Right. So they go back a little earlier. But that is a big thing because I could tell you in August here, attendance has been a lot lighter because you got to figure out what you're going to do with the kids.
Yeah.
Whether in a camp or not in camp and all that fun stuff. So I think parents across the United States, let alone Raleigh area, are looking forward to that.
Sure. Yeah, people are just holding on, hoping. Get to next week. So
get to next week. Great. So everyone has a different story, how they got into sales. You might have grew up wanting to be in sales. You knew at an early age, but I bet you it wasn't. So tell us how you first got your first sales job and what it was.
Yeah, and it's funny, like you talk to a lot of people and you talk to revenue leaders and you hear their story. I think there's many people, and I'm certainly one of them, that didn't, this wasn't like a goal, something I set out to do early in my life. But my first taste of sales was in college, sort of between my sophomore and junior year, was looking at just ways to make money as a poor college student. I entertained doing book sales. And my parents told me that's not a real job. Go get an internship. So that was my first I got close. And then actually when I graduated, I was pre-med. So I considered going to medical school, got cold feet with that, and ended up taking a sales role with a company called Snagajob, which is in Richmond, Virginia. I know you're familiar with them. But they had just raised around. We're hiring a ton of kind of entry-level AEs, and decided to give it a shot. It was something that kind of interested me, but wasn't really sure.
It's kind of a stretch from pre-med to sales, though, no?
Yeah, I mean, so I always was like very interested in companies and technology. I studied business management as well as biology. So sales wasn't something I sought out, but I was always curious, like working for a tech company, sounds cool, what's it going to be like? But really went in without any expectation, had never sold anything in my life. And I think there was a lot of misconceptions I had going into it that I learned were not true.
Yeah.
But ended up loving it, spent 8 years at Snagajob and really never looked back.
So 2 questions in regards to this. One, what was the pivot to get it? What was your what was the thing that made you decide not to go to medical school or pursue a medical career? And
Yeah.
two is, what was it about? It must have been something about Snagajob that kind of lured you in. Maybe it's the culture or something.
Yeah. So, med school was a big multi-year endeavor just to try and set myself up in a position to get in. So I had done, research for a few years to pad my resume, obviously take the MCAT, go through all of that. When I got to the end of the process and it was like, all right, you're going to do interviews, you've got everything ready to go, I got cold feet. And I talked to my cousin who's, we're very close. He's a little older than me. He's kind of a mentor. And he's like, look, you really got to think about, there can be a difference between doing something and being very interested in it, like as a topic, versus like that's what you want to go and get up every morning and go do. So I deferred. I was like, I'm going to maybe hedge my bet. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not going to commit. I'll give it a little time and wait and come back. And I never looked back. But yeah, it wasn't like an aha moment.
Yeah.
But it was like, all right, I'm not fully committed to this. So yeah, I deferred. In terms of Snagajob, I got connected to the company. They're Richmond's not a big tech community, so there's a handful of companies that were at that stage. But went to an open house. It's funny you talking about networking events and the 6-month anniversary. So I went to an open house that they had after they had raised a round, and really just hit it off with some of the people there. So I felt good about what they were doing. The reps they had seemed to have good training. They were having fun. And so it was culture. I felt like I could learn a lot. They had some very, impressive people that were running the sales team at the time. So that was really it. It was a good feeling.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And they must have seen some characteristics in you of a cultural fit and or other characteristics for top sellers as well.
I think in me, they saw a shy kid coming out of college who was hungry and driven. And, I'm grateful to this day. They took a chance on me, but it certainly wasn't like I didn't have a resume of like years of achievement or anything like that. That all came out.
So what was the big challenges when you got into your first sales role at Snagajob? What were some of the big challenges that you ran into early on? Do you remember?
Well, it was super uncomfortable. Like for any seller or any,
Were you sitting on a sales floor?
Sitting in a floor, actually much like this.
Yeah.
We were in the basement of this office.
They put you in the dungeon, huh?
Yeah, there was windows. There were windows, but it was the basement.
Yeah.
And it was just like this, but we were the first class of this department that they hired. I think they hired 12 of us.
Yeah.
They hired another 12. They hired another 12. So 8 months in, there was 100 people.
Oh, wow.
And so back to your question, I think the kind of fear of making your first calls, you don't know what to say, you're getting hung up on, you're dealing with a lot of adversity, rejection. I think getting over that was tough.
Yeah.
I had never sold anything, but I think once I got through a few, I started to taste a little bit of success. Back to I learned that like what actually makes someone successful in sales is not maybe what I thought.
Yeah.
Like asking good questions, doing discovery, learning the business that I was selling into. Like that's where I really started to have fun. And then I've always been kind of a student of the game. So lots of great information, both with my peers, but also online, books. And I really just tried to take that first few years and just absorb as much as I possibly could.
I think you're hitting upon something I'm trying to get at, which is like someone who's first getting into sales, never been in it before. I don't care what age you are, surrounding yourself with other people that are doing what you're supposed to do. You can't get that on Zoom. You can't get that off on one-off trainings. Like you have to live in that environment. It's kind of like being an athlete. Yeah. Imagine training on your own as opposed with the team, right? It's the same thing. You're going to get better being around other athletes. In sales, you're going to be better being around other people. So I feel for folks that are just getting into sales that don't have that environment. And it's one of the catalysts is to Sales HQ. So I imagine you probably got to sit next to, or you probably sought out some of the top sellers there and said, hey, Jim, what's your secret here? I see you're closing more than others and so on. You seem like an inquisitive person, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, you emulate the person who's having the most success. Like, that's a kind of an obvious thing. Like, what are they doing?
Look at Jimmy's driving a Ferrari.
Yeah, yeah. You find the guy with the Corvette in the parking lot. You try and follow them. But yeah, I mean, certainly there's something to be said about being able to hear each other on the phone and sit in on demos. And the sales team's great, but even like being able to go ask an engineer or a product person, like, hey, can you break this down for me? I mean, Snagajob it was a really special, amazing culture.
Yeah.
They were highlighting success stories for both members and customers. So there's a lot that you got just from being kind of thrown into that environment.
Yeah. So I assume you're having success as an individual contributor. You moved up the ranks probably there. What was the catalyst for you to go from being an individual contributor to sales leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a number of different IC roles while I was there. The last role I had, I was an enterprise AE, and we were getting to the point where we'd really stretched our territories pretty thin. And I remember it was a year we really were kind of struggling to hit our numbers. And so at that time, the on-demand market really was starting to take off. So, Uber and Lyft, and these were when people were just starting to hear about these companies. So actually, I identified that as like an opportunity for the company of like, hey, we should really focus in this area. And I was fortunate to work for a head of sales and a CRO who was like, hey, like, just go for it. Like, go try it out. So to answer your question, it started with me kind of as a sales team of one focusing on a new market. And it did really well. We brought on some big logos. It became something that was a lot bigger than one person could manage. And I was given the opportunity to build a small team around me. So that's how it got started. And then that just expanded into managing account management, took on the agency business. And really in 2-3 years, I went from being an IC to having a team of 12, 15 people.
So that's pretty cool. The company let you do that. Number one, take your idea, run with it. But then once it started, let you continue to run with it, because a lot of companies would have said, well, let's put some experienced sales leader to build the team out. So
yeah, I mean, to their
kudos
credit,
to them.
They were willing to take a risk, and it worked out. I think we grew that business to close to $20 million in a few years. So it became a pretty substantial line of business.
So if I recall your profile, you were there about 8 years-ish, something like that?
Yeah, just over 8 years.
What was your big takeaways from your experience there at Snagajob? Because that's really where you kind of grew up. And
yeah, one thing was like building a strong culture, both for a company and a sales team. Like, it's just, I know it's so cliche, but like, it is really the foundation of a company. And you can hire great people and you can give them all the best tools, but creating like a good culture that's rooted in transparency and just making people successful. That was a big reason Snagajob was successful. I mean, they were big on mission, vision, values, and everybody in the company knew that. I think, I also got my first taste of HR tech. And so I really learned to love that market, like the sort of the business of helping other people find jobs. So I personally, like, that was pretty transformative for me. I went on to do a few more HR tech companies. But yeah, I mean, Snagajob was great. And certainly, like, this was really before the days where like the SDR role existed. So for me, like, it was really amazing because I had an AE role and I got to close. Granted, they were small, like being able to cut my teeth, setting my own meetings, but then also learning how to, give a demo, get through proposals, negotiate, just like, amazing experience. So I think one takeaway was, like, if you're a young AE or an SDR, like, find a company that will give you opportunities and will let you grow. And we'll let you make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes in my time at Snagajob, but like, there was always a safety net there.
Yeah. One of the topics I want to talk about is sales coaching, because it seems like it's part of your fundamental core and responsibility as being a sales leader. I also see you've got some connection with Harvard in regards to that. Explain what that relationship is.
Yeah, so Mark Robert he was the founding CRO of HubSpot.
Yep.
And he joined HBS a number of years ago, and he teaches a course called Entrepreneurial Sales. So one of my old leaders at a prior company, he was in Boston and had worked with Harvard, and it's also a partnership with MIT. And so the last 3 years, I've been a sales coach at HBS. So basically what that means is...
What HBS you keep saying?
With Harvard Business School.
Okay.
So this is the MBA program at Harvard.
Yep.
And so it's actually I think it's the most oversubscribed course at HBS.
Really?
So it's super popular. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of popular courses at a school like that. But basically they're teaching these second-year MBAs the foundations of sales. So how to do discovery, how to give a capabilities presentation, how to build a forecast, hiring salespeople. Most of them will not go on to be actual reps. They go into consulting.
So why do they take it? Just to get the basics of sales?
Well, I think the takeaway is sales is a skill. It's not, I mean, it's more science than it is art. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn to do. It's not God-given.
Yep.
And whether you're making a career in sales or you're in one of a handful of any other profession, these skills are super transferable. So it's been a great experience for me, great learning.
How much time does it take? You get once a quarter? What is it? You get a cohort or something?
Yeah, so it's based around when they do the courses. But basically, I get paired up with a handful of MBAs, and then I'll do a few sessions with them over the course of a semester. And basically, they'll record a discovery call. I'll give them feedback on it, and we'll have a call where we basically share notes and help coach them.
How many people are in a cohort? Is it one-on-one or is it?
Yeah, so I'll do between 2 and 4 students each semester. And it's just part-time. It's it's more of a passion project for me, something I do to give back. But yeah, I mean,
give it back to those dumb kids from Harvard.
Yeah, those poor, underprivileged children in Boston.
Way to go, Todd. Way to give back to those kids.
Yeah, but no, I mean, sales coaching has been really great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Certainly a lot of that transfers to what I do.
So let's talk about the companies you worked at, and what is your methodology, philosophy, and sales coaching, and who does that in your organization? What line of management is responsible, and what does that kind of process look like in sales coaching for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think coaching is critical, and certainly you've got to have people that want to be coached. It has to be a two-way street. But in the last few orgs that I've worked in, it's really that's a huge part of the first line leader's job, is to make his or her team successful. So, in addition to having a one-on-one each week, there's time set aside for coaching. So, and certainly with all the sales tools we have now, with things like Gong and others, it's made it pretty easy. You can listen to recordings and then huddle for a bit. And give them live feedback. But yeah, I think it's critical. It's probably one of the most important things that a first line leader can do is to mentor, coach, and develop their team.
Is there any consistency in your experience with what most sellers need coaching on?
I mean, I think it does vary person to person. But I think, I try to be pretty data driven with it. So the easiest way to figure out where to focus is you inspect the metrics. So you look at the sales process, you look at how successful is each person at sort of advancing through the stages. Are they struggling to build pipeline? Are they getting to discovery and then, their pipeline's falling off?
Yeah.
Are they getting to the end of the process and they just don't know how to close? So I think a lot of reps, I mean, if I had to pick a few, I think many reps still struggle to do effective discovery. They ask a few questions, but they don't go deep. They're not really uncovering a problem statement. So that's a big area, but I mean, there's so many things.
If you had to ask your sellers over time, what did they want coaching on? Is there any consistency with that, do you think?
Well, I think back to the bidirectional thing, it's critical that reps actually bring some of the area. Like, it can't just be top-down leader saying, hey, you suck at closing. We're going to spend this month focus on closing. Like, the best coaching, the most effective ones is where the rep is actually saying, like, hey, this is where I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me? Here's 3 examples of an area, or here's a call. Can you listen to this? That's where it works. I think you'll find that some reps are pretty self-aware of where they need help, and others are everything's perfect.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. When you're doing a review, I always liked to hear the rep explain where they think they have challenges, where they think they're doing well, where they think they need improvement.
Yeah.
I always found 2 things. One, that reps were typically harder on themselves than their manager would be.
Sure.
And two camps, either really self-aware and get where they're strong and weak, or not at all. Like, there wasn't any kind of middling, it seems like. And it was always interesting to the ones that weren't as self-aware why that was. Was there just not being honest because they're afraid of maybe losing their job or whatever it might be, or they just weren't self-aware? And I found that top performers tended to be self-aware. At least they could explain to you why they thought they were doing well or not doing well.
And I would say, like, the highest performing sales teams that I've either worked on or been exposed to have a culture where coaching is just like part of the fabric of the team and the company.
Has to be.
I think it's something even like, you need to think about, like, do you hire for people that want to be coached and they want to be part of an organization where they're going to get feedback, and, like, it's not just like a pat on the back of, like, great, you did a good job. It's like they're constantly, looking at things where they can get better. And I think, all the best reps generally want to be part of those types of orgs.
I think all the best reps also want to be pushed.
Yeah.
In a healthy way, right? They want to be challenged. They want to be pushed. I look at it like the Bill Parcells way of coaching. He coached to the person, and he knew what buttons to press on different players to get them to maximize their skills, maximize their, their performance on the field. And I think that as a leader, it's the same thing. You can't coach everybody the same way. And sometimes you're proactive, I think, in the coaching topics because you're listening to the calls and you're seeing things. And I think sometimes it's like, I don't know, Jen, what do you want to talk about today? Right?
Yeah. And those are always harder, where you have to kind of pull it out of people a bit more.
If someone's at 140% of goal and, like, that you're listening to their calls and they're near perfect, it's like you're looking for things to help improve, because everyone can always improve.
Of course.
That's a good problem to have on both sides, right?
It is.
It's rare.
So
another topic was about a lot of folks out there are in the job market, either kind of picking their head up, looking around, or actively pursuing next role. And it's not the best, I call it sales economy right now, to be looking for a job. But let's talk a little bit about, for folks out there that are looking for their next role in sales, what are some advice you can provide in regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on a career journey, and certainly, if you're in sales, I think the days of people working for one company for 40 years are basically gone. So I think it's, I mean this both like for the current company that you might work for or the next one. It's really important to have like a mindset of being open to new adventures and really thinking about like what role can you take or can you look for that will help set you up for where you want to be 1, 2, 3 roles ahead. Really thinking about that long game and what experience you need. Is it you need to work for a certain size company, or if you're early in your career, maybe you just want to be on a team that has like amazing training and you're going to learn a lot. Maybe you won't earn as much. So I would just encourage people to really get clear with yourself on like, what are your priorities? What are you trying to attain with the next role? But you can't be afraid of taking chances.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I was afforded some opportunities that were really transformative for my career. but I've probably taken some roles that didn't work out great as well. And it's, you just have to know that that's part of the game. Now, of course, you want to make as good decisions as possible.
Do your research. Right?
It's not fun when if you join a company that runs out of money
Yep.
a week later. But I think just doing your research and building your network and really being thoughtful about what you can get out of the next role.
Yep.
And how it fits into your career narrative is super important.
So let's say you're reviewing candidates for roles, or your team's reviewing candidates for roles, and you get these resumes or profiles. They come in, and you're seeing some profiles with some misses, right? Short stints here and there. But you just said, like, don't be afraid to take risks. If you're in startup land, you're taking risks every startup you join.
Yeah.
Product may be ready for market or may not be. The founder is going to tell you it's the best product ever invented since the history of mankind, but it's hit or miss. So do you overlook some of those things on the resume to give the candidate a chance if you see certain things, or do you just strike it out? I bring this up, and it's a long-winded question, because I think a lot of sellers are getting punished right now over the last 3 years of 12 months, 9 months, 12 months type of, and I feel bad for them because it doesn't mean they're not good at sales.
Of course.
It may not have been a fit or timing wasn't right?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, and I always appreciate people that own, those sort of things, and maybe they proactively call them out and explain them versus just trying to bury them. But I think, at a certain level, you have to be, like, especially now where it's the golden age of information, like, you do have to be smart about doing your diligence on these companies before you agree to put your livelihood, at stake in joining them. So I think most reps will have at least one or two kind of misses or maybe a short stop on their resume.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't want to build too much of a brand around that. I have 5.
I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah, no one wants it. But I think
explaining the transition from role to role, why you chose the company in your transition to the next role is very important, and it has to seem, to me anyway, authentic. Like, I don't want to bring BS into this. Give me it straight. So I find out you're not being straight about it, then
you can't have any spin around it.
No.
And even if it wasn't like a home run, like, what did you learn from it? Like, what did you take away, even if it was a hard situation?
Yep.
I think that's critical. So
I assume along your career you have promoted folks internally from an IC role to a management.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of folks out there are looking to get into sales leadership for one reason or another. What do you kind of look for when you're promoting internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. And certainly, there's some people that aspire to get into management and others that just want to stay carrying a number, carrying a bag for their career. There's no right or wrong. For me, I look for people that they can do the job. So you need to be able to lead from the front. Certainly, there's very few sales managers that maybe they're not like world class at being a seller, but like they can do the role. So I think that's table stakes. They've done the role. They've been successful in it. But beyond that, I think it's like, can they be really thoughtful about how they support and build a team?
Yeah.
Do they like, coaching people?
Yeah.
Do they enjoy giving feedback? Are they solution oriented? Certainly, there's many people that are great reps that struggle in management.
I assume, as an experienced sales leader, you can kind of see in the team which ones are more supportive in general, meaning that they give more than others. Because let's be honest, some ICs are very about me. Sure. It's not about me; it's about me. And in leadership, it's never about you anymore. It's always about the team, right? And it's hard sometimes to really see if that person's really going to be about the team, or is it about them, right?
It's tough to identify, especially if it's not someone, you're hiring someone from the outside. Yeah. But I think you really got to dig deep in the interview process of understanding why are they, is it
Yeah.
money,
Why
which
do you
is
wanna
not
do it?
necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
But like, why do they want to get
If
into
it's about money, you should
management?
stay in the IC role. 'Cause
Yeah,
you'll
that is very true.
you'll make more money. I've got a couple of questions up, but I want to see if anyone in the audience might want to have a question or not. It's okay if you don't. Do you, ma'am? Okay, go this. Go around that way because they're afraid of the camera. Or you
All right.
better be ready.
Let's go.
This is going to hit you hard.
Hey, Linda.
I'm going to read your LinkedIn belatedly after this, but for those who want to know now, what is Snagajob and HR tech in general? And then I wanted to point out something that you just brought up about holes in people's resumes. That I had a client, I do resumes, and I had a client who thought that because he had lost several jobs in a row that he had to find a way to hide it. And I found out that he had been sought out by previous managers 3 times because the companies got purchased or whatever. But I thought that was,
got rehired, lost it, got rehired, type of thing.
it wasn't the same company that rehired him. It was the same, like 3 people, but they had all seen his capabilities and his results. He had not, he didn't know how to take credit for that, which I thought was the most amazing thing. And then also he was looking to get out of sales, and I was like, are you crazy? Just find a good place. But anyway, what is HR tech and Snagajob?
Yeah, so HR tech is the whole ecosystem of tech companies that support like human resources as a function. So that's everything from, businesses that help with recruiting, helping you find talent, whether that's, job boards or sourcing tools. There's a whole kind of slew of different solutions.
I assume Workday's like the biggest in that industry, right?
Yeah, in terms of like the human capital management, like the full employee life cycle, Workday, certainly Indeed, Oracle, but then there's all the payroll companies,
Okay.
BP, Paycor, many of them. So there's literally hundreds of companies. And if you think about like what are functions in any business that must exist, people operations or HR is one of them. So HR tech is a big and growing ecosystem.
How many different, roughly, applicant tracking systems are out there, and how does somebody even know what their resume is going to look like on the other side if they're all different?
It's a great question. I don't know how many there are, but there's probably too many. At least 50. Yeah, I think it's tough for candidates. Obviously, as the volume of applications has grown for a lot of companies, they look for ways to be more efficient. And so the ATS is like a tool they use to kind of manage all the inbound that they're getting and look at which sources are producing, the best quality. So I don't know that I have a great answer for you in terms of how they know what it's going to look like on the other side, but definitely, hopefully their application looks the way that they submitted it, but there's more and more use of AI and different tools to help say like, okay, you got 400 applications, here are the 20 that you should start with.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Great
Questions,
questions.
Linda. I've got one last question for you. It's a really hard one, so you're going to have to think about this.
All right.
One. You ready?
On
And if you listen to the podcast, you know it's coming. So.
Okay.
Oh, he's like, oh shit.
What do you got?
Tell us one thing about Todd that most people don't know that you find very interesting about yourself, or others would find interesting about Todd.
Oh boy,
But
something
most people don't know. Your wife could know, your kids could know, but most people in general wouldn't know about you.
Oh, okay. I didn't prepare for this,
That's what I'm
Vince.
saying. That's why.
So yeah,
that's what I'm
I
saying.
should have got to the end of the ones I listened to.
You could have stole theirs, yeah.
Well, maybe not the most interesting thing, but if I didn't make a career in sales,
Yes.
and maybe if money was no object either, I would probably be like a vagabond of of sorts. So I really enjoy travel. I love kind of experiencing different cultures, seeing different countries, other parts of the world. So
Yes.
if it wasn't sales, maybe I'd be a tour guide or a travel
Nice.
agent
I like that.
or something involving lots of world travel.
And last question: what so far in your journeys? What's been your favorite destination?
Oh, my favorite destination. Well, I'm a mountain person, so um, I mean the Alps are pretty
That's
special.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I got to go to a little mountain in Switzerland.
Skiing or hiking?
Well, I
Both,
love
right?
both,
Yeah.
but I am a skier.
Yeah.
So if you ever get a chance to go to Zermatt in Switzerland, is incredible. So, but yeah, I mean, travel special. We have a very amazing
Yeah.
planet we live on.
Yeah,
so
we do.
There's probably
I like
thousands
that.
of places I've never
That's a
been.
good one, Todd. I want to thank you for being a guest on Live from Sales HQ, and hope you'll come back again in the future.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me, Vince.
Hey, till next time, mate. Sales HQ.
All right.